This brings up, underneath all of this, there's a fascinating question that Tanya and I talked about. So, if Justin Trudeau was going to resign, why would he announce this?
The Canada Post strike didn't just affect Christmas cards, presents, and passports. It also stopped Canadians from donating money to charity organizations around the country. The issue is that the deadline to donate to charities and receive a refund on your 2024 tax filing was December 31st, which disincentivized Canadians from donating this year. This also had charities and the premiers asking Justin Trudeau to extend the deadline. Some news organizations are reporting that he did, but is that really true?
Let's take a look.
This is a mobile mission rescue van. Inside, food, warm clothing, and supplies for Metro Vancouver's homeless. But this winter, donations have dropped.
It was a little bit concerning because we didn't want it to impact our 2025 operating budget and the people that we serve.
Mail-in donations disappeared during the Canada Post strike. Organizations like this across the country have taken a huge hit.
We actually received 50% of our annual revenue in the months of November and December. So that was when the strike was happening.
To help make up for that, Canadians will now have almost 2 extra months to give and still claim a tax credit on their 2024 return.
We're so grateful that the deadline has been extended until February because these next few months are going to be really tough for our community.
The federal government made the announcement nearly a week after Canada's premiers called on the Liberals to make the move.
So, this is interesting because we were corresponding with one of the Conservative MPs about a week or two ago. And it was in response to the fact that the Salvation Army was also raising the alarm on this. So this is the press release that they put out. Salvation Army urges an extension for the 2024 charitable donations tax credit. Now, they're essentially saying the same thing that the video said, is that they're missing like 50% of their revenue, and that's as a result of the Canada Post strike, and they're relying, up to 65% of the annual revenue to come around during the November-December timeline. So they were urging, along with many other organizations, for Ottawa to actually extend that deadline. Now, the thing that I actually posed back to the MP was, well, how are they going to do that? Because reflecting back to the GST holiday, in order to actually change that, they had to make a change to the tax law. And to make a change to the tax law requires a bill. And they're not in the House right now, so how can you get a bill through to change the tax law?
Well, and when they do come back to the House, it's still going to be seized as far as we know.
So what we ended up confirming is that, yes, this would actually be a change to the tax law that's required to actually do this. Now, let's go through a couple of these scenarios. Some people are expecting Justin Trudeau is going to step down. And if he does that, Parliament will be prorogued. And if Parliament's prorogued, then nobody's going to be sitting. And if nobody's sitting, then you're not going to be able to introduce bills. And if you can't introduce bills, you can't extend the tax deadline. So that's the first part. The second part is that he may not step down and he may prorogue anyway, which you end up the exact same scenario. Now, if he doesn't prorogue and he doesn't step down, then we're going to be expecting a non-confidence motion to come from the Conservatives, which is allegedly going to be backed by both the Bloc and the NDP, which may force the government to fall, in which case there's not going to be an extension to the tax deadline. So what the hell are you talking about, news agencies? Like, are you doing so little homework that this is what you're actually doing? And this is what you're actually saying in your headlines. Oh, Ottawa's extended the deadline.
Do you know, I wonder if it's a, how do I phrase this? If they're kind of hopeful that it's going to happen in order to get people to donate, which I don't think you need to bend the truth in order to get people to donate. Whether you donate now and it's on your 2024 tax return, or you donate now and it's going to be on your 2025 tax return, you're still going to be eligible for a tax credit. So if you're planning on donating to a charitable organization, or maybe you wanted to over Christmas and you didn't have the opportunity, one way or the other, you will get your tax credit, but it's just going to depend on the year.
Right.
So, I mean, don't not donate because you think, oh, well, I'll get it next year, or I might get it this year, or whatever it ends up being. If you were planning on donating, absolutely still donate.
So the first clip that we showed you was from CTV. Here's another one from City News.
The extension is welcome news for local charities, some of which rely on mail-in donations for 20% of their annual revenue. The North York Harvest Food Bank says they are $800,000 short of their usual target.
North York Harvest Food Bank was really affected by the strike. We usually make about $350,000 through our direct mail program at the end of the year, and to date, not one letter has come back.
In an already tough year with rising costs and inflation, North York Harvest Food Bank says the strike couldn't have come at a worse time. The food bank serves roughly $30,000 a month, and the number keeps climbing.
We make most of our money between September and December every single year, and not having that income coming in this year means that we will have to look at cutting different programs or services next year, not expanding on the staff that we had hoped to hire, and really cutting back as much as we have to.
Meanwhile, local charity Engage in Change has felt similar effects, also receiving zero mail-in donations because of the strike.
We're a small grassroots charity at Engage in Change. We rely 100% on donations. We don't do grant and corporate sponsorship, and we've lost out on probably close to $100,000.
Steinhauer is also the founder of Kids for a Cause, an organization that provides over 160 nonprofits and social services with supplies they need at a wholesale price. They've had to cut back supplies by roughly 50%.
We've had to reduce every single number of kits because we can't choose one agency over another. They're all doing amazing work. So because of the disruption of monies coming in, we've had to reduce the amount of kits per agency, and they're all just begging for more. They're desperate.
Canada Help says the news is optimistic only for Canadians who may have mailed in a check that has not yet been received by the charity.
The legislation that was announced yesterday is only intended and proposed. So if government is prorogued or parliament is dissolved in the new year, this legislation is also at risk of not passing. And for that reason, for any Canadians who think that they may have some extra time, it's important to get their donation in today to get that guarantee that they'll get a 2024 tax receipt.
So that last bit, I imagine, was taped back in 2024 in December, as opposed to now, which is January.
Yeah. Even though the video was dropped, I believe, after December 31st, it was no doubt live, in December. So at least this bit, they're going on to say, well, it's intended, not proposed. But the problem is these organizations don't seem to have that understanding. So after the initial press release that the Salvation Army put out, they put out a second one thanking Justin Trudeau. Salvation Army thanks Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Government of Canada for extending the tax donation deadline. They basically go on to say, oh, it's really important. Thank you very much. It's so...
But it hasn't been put in yet.
Yeah.
There is no legislation yet. Legislation is required in order to do this. They need to create a bill. It needs to pass through the House of Commons, then through the Senate, and then receive royal assent. But it hasn't happened yet.
Right. So, like, when do you plan on doing this? Right? When do you think this is going to happen, Trudeau? Now, one possibility is that Justin Trudeau may try and use this as kind of a guilt club over the opposition party, saying, oh, you're preventing all these charities from getting all this money, which is complete garbage.
And then we know that the NDP will probably hop on that bandwagon because it's in part, like it's on par for their brand to be supporting charities and the little guy, right?
Well, it all depends on what angle they want to take, because this whole issue begins at the top. It begins with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government. They skyrocketed inflation, and as a result, you have all of these unions all over the country, not just the government unions, but all these unions all over the country that had pre-negotiated cost of living increases in their contracts at, 1 or 2%, sometimes as high as 3%, because that was typically what inflation was.
Yeah, that's normal for inflation. We saw inflation of like 8 or 9% per year, especially after COVID.
So, you have that, and so all of these union contracts are coming due, and they're saying, well, now we're way behind, so we want to catch up. Now, you can agree or disagree with that. That doesn't really matter. From the employer side, they're saying, well, we don't have the money because everything has gone up in price. So both sides have an argument here. The issue is it's Justin Trudeau and the Liberals that caused this mess in the first place. So that's going to have to be the rebuttal from the Conservatives, the Bloc, and the NDP, if they have the guts to do it, is to say, well, no, we're not preventing them from doing this. You're the one that's actually causing this. Now, the other thing that they could do is say, well, that doesn't matter. When we get in government, we will put through legislation to retroactively take care of all of that.
So, and this is the part where I'm confused. Is the legislation for the tax break itself? So if I, for example, donate $100 to a registered charity, that can go on my taxes for 2024, even if I do it in January? Or is it for the operating budget of the charity itself? Because many charities, organizations, etc., corporations, their fiscal year ends December 31st. So is that what they're asking to be extended? Is the fiscal year? Or are they asking for the tax break to be extended?
The tax deadline is what they're asking to be extended. So if Canadians donate in January, in February, then they would be able to claim that on their 2024 tax receipt.
But no, this just raises further questions. Why were they so heavily reliant on Canada Post? I understand they say, oh, we put out mailers and we expect checks back in return. But why do these charities not have like a PayPal, for example, set up, or something like an electronic thing where you can input your credit card and pay, maybe a $50 donation, etc.?
Well, that's a question we won't know the answer to. But the other thing to actually deal with in terms of what they're saying, in terms of their lack of donations, some of it is probably due to the Canada Post strike, but charities, let's be real here. A lot of it is probably because Canadians don't have the money anymore to actually donate. That's the sad reality here.
Yeah, that is true.
And now that we're past Christmas, I don't think you're going to get many donations at all, even, if this does pass. That's the problem. You're
going to get people whose Christmas credit card bills are coming due in January. And many Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck as it is. To get a large credit card bill like that, there's not going to be a lot left to donate to a charity, unfortunately. Now, the other interesting thing here is that this brings up, underneath all of this, there's a fascinating question that Tanya and I talked about. So, if Justin Trudeau was going to resign, why would he announce this? That's the question. If he was going to resign, there would be no point in even talking about this. If he was going to prorogue, there would be no point in talking about this for whatever reason, whether it's prorogue to resign and select a new leader, or whether it's to prorogue, right? Right. So, this sets up an interesting dynamic in that, okay, so it wouldn't make sense for Justin Trudeau to announce this and then prorogue, because then that would make the Liberal Party look even worse than it already is, right? If possible. It wouldn't make sense for him to announce this and then step down and then prorogue, because again, same reason. It wouldn't make sense for him to announce a step down and not prorogue, because then the House will fall during a leadership race in the Liberal Party. So it seems like he's using this as a wedge issue between himself and the opposition parties. Trying to, anyway. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But this may have just increased the possibility that Justin Trudeau does not resign. And if you talk to
political analysts on any of these panels, they're all saying a different thing. So in short, nobody knows what's going to happen with Justin Trudeau. You have Tom Mulcair saying, yes, he's absolutely going to resign. You have Scott Reid saying, well, there's nothing else that he can do but resign.
Well, if you remember in October when you were on Parliament Hill, you were hearing that people were saying, oh, yeah, absolutely, we're going to prorogue as early as tomorrow. And then the analysts were saying, oh, yeah, they're going to prorogue. And here we are in January of 2025, and nothing has happened yet.
So nobody knows what's going to go on here but Justin Trudeau. And Brian Lilley and the people at The Sun, they think that he's not going to step down. So
that's my bet. And again, this is just my opinion. I don't have like any concrete evidence. I haven't had any conversations with Justin Trudeau that says, oh yeah, I'm totally going to stay on. No, this is just my gut instinct. But as of right now, I don't think he's going to step down.
Well, and this is going to be the question. It's going to be the question. But it's just a bizarre set of chess moves that's going on here. So we're going to see how this, kind of lays out. Maybe Justin Trudeau is going to wait to see what happens at the Standing Committee of Public Accounts when this non-confidence motion recommendation is presented. And then they're going to debate that at the Standing Committee of Public Accounts. By all indications from the NDP, sounds like they're going to vote for it because Charlie Angus doesn't go to that committee. So, so sounds like that's going to go to the House, and then that's going to be presented on January 27th. So we're probably going to have to wait about 3 weeks to see, is Justin Trudeau going to actually prorogue or not? Either way, yeah, this is supposed to be the quiet time of the year, folks, but